I got the short end of the stick.
Oh yeah. I forgot somebody had to do all the work. Glad it wasn't me.
Yeah. I'm glad I didn't have to do it either.
Mercifully, though, the work is done. And the preseason has come to a very abrupt and somewhat entertaining end for the Vegas Golden Knights. It's been 4 games since I've last sat down and done one of these, I think. And there's been a lot of good, and there's been a lot of bad. And just like my most recent haircut, the time between now and the banner raising is a lot shorter than it was when I talked to you guys last.
Well, I guess it's good to know that he's completely lost his mind.
Hey, I had to do that work last week. I get it. With all of that, preseason is over, and all the storylines that we were worried about talking about and all the storylines that we did talk about have now played out to their fullest extent, and now we can, in some ways, talk about them. First and foremost, with this preseason was the issue of who is going to fill in for Riley Smith. And amazingly, we have reached the exact same conclusion as what we all thought coming into this training camp. Brendan Brisson, great player, got sent down, I believe, yesterday to the Silver Knights because he's not quite there yet. He's a very talented player, but he still needs to work on his 200-foot game. The wild card, Max Comtois, did not play in the last 2 preseason games, and it is unlikely that he will be signed to the NHL roster with his PTO. And now the real situation actually has less to do with who is going to fill in for Riley Smith and whether or not the full forward core is going to be healthy. More on that in a minute. Whether the forward core is going to be healthy. More on that in a minute. It very quickly became a 2-horse race between the 2 players that we expected it to be to vie for Riley Smith's spot. Paul Cotter and Pavel Dorofeev, both of which have had excellent preseasons, especially recently. The preseason got off to a very slow start for the Golden Knights in general, losing back-to-back games and I think going 1-3 through their first 4. And then, the games against Colorado happen. The Golden Knights go down 3-0 and then come back to win. And then the Golden Knights go down 2-0 and 3-1 to the LA Kings before Jack Eichel decides to say, I'm going to play hockey now, and had a 5-point game to wrap off the exhibition schedule with the Golden Knights winning, 7-4 or 7-5? That was yesterday as the time of recording. I'm recording this on Sunday, October 8th. Both Dorofeev and Cotter had exceptional preseasons. They both have played very well down the stretch, with both of them scoring in that comeback against the Colorado Avalanche, Cotter getting the game winner and Dorofeev getting the second goal of the game, both of which were instrumental in the Golden Knights' ability to come back in that game, and they both looked relatively solid in the final preseason game against the LA Kings. Now, the reason they were both in the final preseason game is more of a concerning matter, and that has to do with the injury bug that seems to have gripped the Golden Knights once again in this regular season, and has gripped them once again in this preseason. Oh, just once I'd love the whole team to be healthy for more than a week at a time. Is that too much to ask? Hey, wrong jersey. Oh, yeah, you're right. Hold on. Yeah, this is better. Unfortunately, yes, the Golden Knights have been wrapped with injury again. Zach Whitecloud missing the entire preseason after playing a couple of shifts in the first game, took a hit up high and has needed surgery. And Alec Martinez didn't play the back half of the preseason, but he's not expected to miss opening night. The real wild card is William Karlsson. He only played very little bit this preseason, has not practiced very much, and I still think he may be dealing with a hangover from the parade. He did finally put a shirt back on, but he hasn't played in a while, and it's still unclear as to whether or not he will go on Tuesday night during the banner raising. What this means is that at the back end, as I said prior, Dorofeev and Cotter got to duel it out on the same ice at the same time against the same team with relatively similar lines, with Dorofeev playing on the third line and Cotter playing on the second line. Not too much to be unexpected there. And they did flip-flop throughout the game, so they got plenty of time. And honestly, management got a really good view of what they're going to be dealing with. Another player who benefited from the injuries on the back end, was 2 of them, Ben Hutton and Braden Pahal. Now, I know Daniil Miramanov would be in this position if he hadn't been hurt at the end of last year and wasn't still rehabbing, and it wouldn't shock me. In a normal year, Miramanov would have been on the opening night roster. You can see I have a soft spot for that guy. He's very, very fun to watch, and tall right-handed defensemen don't grow on trees. But the fact of the matter is the Golden Knights are injured again, which is just beaten the dead horse at this point with this franchise. It's just been injury after injury after injury, especially over the last 2 seasons. But ultimately, it seems like none of these are going to be too bad, with White Cloud being the only one that seems like it will keep him out for any amount of time, and that amount of time may be 1 to 3 weeks after the start of the regular season. But who knows? It's a little bit too early to tell. And so now we have to look at who the best performers through the preseason were, and there were a couple of players I was very surprised with. Primarily, the way that Logan Thompson was able to rattle off, come back from an injury that kept him out for the foreseeable future of the entire last season. He didn't play great in his first start, and then he played good in his next 2 outings over the course of the rest of the preseason. And honestly, he looked very, very solid against the Colorado Avalanche in his last start. Likewise, Aiden Hill has looked very good throughout this preseason. I know they both technically lost the game against the Sharks 2-0, but that's not really down to them, and that's more down to the fact that the Golden Knights are playing exactly 1 NHL regular on the back end, and they benefited, both of them, from a very heavily defensive system, which they'll have for all 82 games of the preseason. I know the goaltending is still a point of contention for the Golden Knights, especially in the national conversation, but I think Logan Thompson and Aiden Hill are going to be a good enough tandem to get the Golden Knights through whatever might hit them this year, especially because one of them is, this team, knock on wood, invariably going to get injured, and it will ultimately wind up missing 20 games because that's just the way things go with this team right now. And then obviously up front, Jack Eichel had a very, very good way to end his preseason, and I mean, a 5-point game is one way to do it, especially against an LA Kings team who were playing most of their starters, including their new, franchise goalie in Cam Talbot. Can't believe I just said that. Cam Talbot is a franchise goalie now. Yeah, I know. A lot of other individuals had solid preseasons. Jonathan Marchessault scored a really good goal in the final preseason game. Chandler Stevenson looked good. All the guys that you expected to be good looked good, which is good. However, there are a few concerning things that happened this preseason, aside from all the injuries, which we've already talked about, and I'm already not thrilled about it. But the one very concerning thing that happened in this preseason, and I'm sure it's just the preseason, is how hard everybody played the Golden Knights. This was probably one of the toughest exhibition schedules the Golden Knights have had in terms of results. They got taken out to the cleaners by the San Jose Sharks. The Sharks. Yeah, no, that's not usually how this goes. I believe the Golden Knights lost both their matchups to the Sharks this preseason, which is not something that we can say happens very often, especially with that rivalry. And, 1-1 record against the Kings, that's a little bit more expected. But some of these games that the Golden Knights lost had a lot of NHL regulars in the lineup for us and not a lot for them on the other side. And so that is mildly concerning. I know that there is, a level of, whatever, it's the preseason, we'll play when it actually matters. And there is some level of truth to that. I think 7 preseason games is about 4 too many preseason games, even though I know you have to evaluate the prospects. But there is such a thing as too much free time. When you've got Keegan Colasar out on the penalty kill in your final preseason game, you've played a few too many games. But ultimately, that's not the most worrying thing that happened this preseason. What's most worrying is how many penalties the Golden Knights took this preseason. They led the preseason in at least one category. The New Jersey Devils led it in wins and goals. The Golden Knights led it in penalties, total. They were averaging about 2 penalties per period over 7 games. They took an unhealthy amount of penalties. I believe in the game against the Colorado Avalanche, we were at 5 penalty kills by 8 o'clock. I think that's what Bruce Cassidy said. It was not the greatest game, and even if the Golden Knights came back to win that game, it is mildly concerning, and it happened again against LA in the last preseason game. However, that does highlight a very interesting aspect of this preseason that doesn't shock me as a diehard fan, but it may have shocked the rest of the league. The Golden Knights are really, really, really good at coming back. Golden Knights were down 3-0 against the Avs and 2-0 and 3-1 against the Kings, with both of those teams, especially the Avs, wanting to win, and the Kings would have liked to have won given the amount of people they had and that it was at home for them. The Golden Knights were able to dig themselves out of the hole. They dug themselves early on in the first period. They were down 2-0 early in both of those games and found a way to win, especially that game against Colorado. They found a way to score 3 goals in the third period and found a way just to scratch and claw their way back into the game, and a little bit of dumb luck, a little bit of a bounce here and there, and that game goes the way of the Golden Knights. I know it doesn't matter because it's the preseason, but it still is a sign of resilience. The Golden Knights were very good in the past of winning close games, winning a lot of games by 1 goal last year. They had more 1-goal wins than the Calgary Flames did, which is saying something because the Calgary Flames had like none when they were trailing in the third period. And there was at one point where the Golden Knights were the best in the league when trailing going into the third period. So that's not to be surprised. That's not a surprising statistic, but it is a thing that the Golden Knights and especially the front office needs to be wary of so that doesn't happen going forward. Ultimately, though, the preseason went exactly how it was supposed to go. The Golden Knights played some good games. They played some bad games. They had some ugly moments. Mark Stone beat the tar out of somebody, which was completely unexpected. There was a lot of high marks. There was a lot of low marks. But ultimately, it's over. Preseason is done. The banner is going to be raised in 2 days. And I am super excited for that. The roster is going to look pretty much exactly what it looked like when the Golden Knights raised the Stanley Cup on June 13th. With only the notable absence, with the exception of the injured players, which could be as many as 3, but as few as 1. The only absentee being Riley Smith, who won't be in town for a few months. And I guarantee you, when he gets back into town, the ovation is going to be just absolutely insane. But ultimately, the roster looks good. Ivan Barbashev looks very good in the position. He's definitely, through the preseason, justified the contract extension the Golden Knights gave him. Marchessault continued his good play. The fourth line is still the fourth line, and they will only get better with time as they get better and start matching up against real fourth lines. And the farm system looks good. The Henderson Silver Knights players that came up throughout this preseason, especially Brisson and Pahal and Korzak and Demek, who just got his big boy contract, a 3-year ELC signed literally this morning after scoring a shootout winner for the Silver Knights in last night's preseason game. Talk about a day for that kid. He looked very good all preseason. A lot of the youth looks good. There's just nowhere to put them right now. And so barring injury, which, as I've said numerous times, is kind of an inevitability with this franchise, the future's bright. And I know that the reload's going to have to come eventually. The salary cap's slated to go up $5 million at the end of this year, and that's a problem for the trade deadline at the earliest and the offseason at the latest. But things are looking fairly solid for the Golden Knights to be a very strong contender when it comes to the Pacific Division, the Western Conference, and the entire NHL as a whole. Now, I don't want to make a prediction on how the Golden Knights are going to do on a title defense, and I'm kind of being spurred on by stuff I heard from the Steve Dangle podcast the other day. They finally released their season preview for the Golden Knights. They recorded it the night after Stone got lit up in the Kings game, but it just came out yesterday. I mean, from one content creator to another, much bigger content creator. At least I'm not alone in being late on things. But ultimately, it's hard to gauge what the Stanley Cup hangover is going to do to this team. A lot of these players have done it before. Pietrangelo, Barbashev, Stevenson, Martinez, all players who have won Stanley Cups before and had to defend them, and most of them didn't. Actually, all of them didn't, but that's not the point. The point is there's a lot of maturity in this locker room, and the leadership group is there. The important pieces of the team are entering the season healthy. Mark Stone looks healthy. Marchessault looks healthy. Eichel looks healthy. Pietrangelo looks healthy. And so with that core group, everything should be okay to set up a reasonable title defense for the Golden Knights. With that being said, I still think they're going to finish second in the Pacific Division because the Oilers are the Oilers, and the Golden Knights have now realized that it doesn't really matter what you do in the regular season. All that matters is getting 16 wins in the playoffs and raising another Stanley Cup. So with that being said, it's T-minus 48 hours, give or take, until the kickoff of the next regular season, the title defense, and what is the second most important moment in our franchise's history, aside from what happened on June 13th, raising the Stanley Cup champion banner to the rafters of T-Mobile Arena in front of 18,000 plus absolutely ballistic fans. That being said, thank you for watching. I am super excited for the season to start, and you best believe I'm going to do all 82 games this year if I can help it. Fingers crossed. We're going to see how the first game goes, and I can't wait to watch it. It's going to be super exciting, and I will try and drag you guys along through my enjoyment of this amazing season. Another preseason's over, and it's time to start the defense. I'll see you guys on Wednesday.